Hey, let me ask you this question. What are, or what would be, the greatest escapes of all time? Obviously, on that list, it's one I just made, from Earth straight to space, because there's a garbage fire down there. But on the list of great escapes throughout history, what do you think of? Well, you might think of Alcatraz, or maybe something more pop culture related, you think of The Shawshank Redemption, where a Mr. Andy Dufresne crawled through half a mile of grocery just to get washed clean on the other side. Well, now may I present to you what I think might be the Andy Dufresne of the animal world and the greatest / grossest escape that is now in the scientific literature. It's a beetle, a frog, and a butt. So you know what that means. It's office hours, baby. Hello and welcome to Office Hours, a live version of the facility where good old Professor Kyle opens up his doors after class, even though no kid comes in, even though kids are getting bad test scores, and I say, come and see me for office hours, is what they're there for, but they're like, nah. My door's open, and you can talk to me about any science-y, pop culture-y thing you want to. This week, I have a number of things on my mind, and we will get to those as we always do during office hours. But first, of course, at the very top, if you want to join the facility, you can go to patreon.com/Kyle Hill, which my security team will put in the chat, and you can do this kind of thing with me each and every day. Look, I'm just a guy trying to bring you some light and some entertainment and some joy into this year, which is bad. You see what happened in Beirut? I mean, come on. Anyway, so I'm here to talk about a number of things. Hopefully we can have some fun for the next hour or so. And I mentioned that my security team is in the chat, so if you're spamming or if you're doing all caps and saying bad words and stuff, you'll get immediately banned, because that's how we roll. I do have super chats enabled, so if you really want me to see something, I will try my very best to see it and talk about it, but if I don't, I apologize. Just be fine with knowing that it's all going towards the facility. And specifically, right now, upgrading the quality of these here podcasts. So, with that, before we get to our first topic, Curzon Calamond with the 10 who says, how much damage could a Super Dragon Ball cause to the planet if Goku dropped a... Okay, so obviously I can't read, and you know, the chat doesn't go towards me reading, but are you talking about a spirit bomb? I once did an episode on that where I tried to calculate the energy content of living things on a planet. So when Goku is drawing energy from every living thing, I almost tried a King Kai impression, I definitely can't do it. When he was drawing energy from every living thing, I don't think that it was enough energy to destroy the planet Earth, which makes sense if you think about it, because the energy resources to nope, it doesn't make sense if you think about it. I don't think there's enough. You need about, and I know this number, it's burned in my brain. The common figure is the gravitational binding energy of Earth. So how much energy you would have to put into Earth to remove every speck of its mass an infinite distance away. That's overkill, but it's a good value because you can calculate it pretty easily, assuming Earth is roughly spherical, and it's not. It's an oblate spheroid. Anyway, the amount of energy that you need is roughly 2 × 10 to the 32 joules, which is trillions upon trillions upon thousands. So it's quite a bit, and I don't think there's enough energy contained in living things. And remember, energy is a unit. It's not like a magical, mystical cloud that explains why your crystals do stuff. Matthew with the 5, it says, hey Kyle, thanks for the entertainment and for introducing me to the Expanse. It's a good show. JD wins these with the 5. Let's pause the chats for a second so we can get to our first topic. I gotta tell you about frog butts. JD wins these with the 5. Hey Kyle, love the show. What is it that makes things addictive? I'm 1 week smoke-free and wondering what makes people addicted. Well, congratulations on being smoke-free. The interesting thing about the cessation of smoking is that the gains that you see from it physically and biologically are rather immediate. So you can see health-related gains, health-related metrics go up or go back towards good within like the first day. Within the first week, they get even better, and then within the first month and year, they get even better. So if you want to quit smoking, it's not like you have to quit It's not like you have to be done with smoking for 10 years before you feel better again. You will feel better almost instantly. So congratulations. You can smoke if you want to. It's your body, but it's terrible for you. It's the #1 recreational health hazard. It's more harmful than everything else you do if you smoke. Anyway, so what makes people addicted? Well, it would be there's 2 components to addiction, and I'm not an expert, so don't quote me on any of this. But as far as I understand it, there's a biological component and there's a social component. So there's obviously biological. You start to say, if you gave your body a certain amount of chemical, your body doesn't just naturally take all of that chemical at once and do nothing. Your body, because it wants to maintain some level of homeostasis, your body will start to change your internal environment such that it can handle the more chemicals, serotonin or dopamine, whatever it may be. And so you will get more receptors on your cells to be like, oh, there's more of this chemical coming in. We should make more of the receptors to handle it. And so when you then, if you went cold turkey or you reduce the amount of chemicals you're giving to your body, suddenly your body, quote unquote, wants and is expecting this level of chemical which you're now getting, and that manifests as some of the feelings and qualities of addiction. There's also a social component where a researcher told me this incredible story. It's obviously tragic, but there are these 2 girls in high school who every day would go into the bathroom at noon and shoot heroin, which you shouldn't do. But because of the social component, she says, their bodies started anticipating location and time. So when they entered the bathroom at that specific time, their body was already kind of prepping itself. And so over time, these girls worked up to what the researcher called like an adult level dose. Now, one day, one of the girls was sick and she stayed home. And at noon, she went to her bathroom, she took the regular dose, and she died instantly. So that gives some idea that there is a social context component to addiction where your body wasn't prepped or primed in the same exact way. That's kind of, let's move on. Last one for now. Patrick Peterson with the 10. Hey show, great Kyle. You think. Celebrating my birthday a day early by simping for science. Oh, keep up the great work, super vet. Nope, I'm not. But happy birthday. Kind of. Almost. Let's get on to our very first topic, and the greatest escape, perhaps, of all time. So this is a beetle. Don't think I really need to tell you that. But this is a water beetle, and this water beetle recently made what I'm claiming is the greatest escape of all time. And what it was escaping from a frog, so escaping predation. Now, there are many examples of parasites and other organisms, many insects, that have been eaten or are eaten by some predator and then survive, where they're maybe just excreted in the feces and they're still alive. That happens. However, this new study that I'm mentioning today is, and let me just quote from the study to make sure I'm getting it right. This study is the first, I'm quoting now, is the first to document active prey escape from the vent of a predator. That's one way to put it, huh? And to show that prey may promote predator defecation to hasten escape from inside the predator's body. So what actually happened was fascinating, and the experimental design was fascinating. So a researcher in Japan noticed that these beetles were getting pooped out of frogs, and they were fine. Okay, interesting. Then he thought, well, maybe the beetle is doing this on purpose. Maybe it's actually trying to escape the body or forcing its own escape, like an Andy Dufresne crawling down the sewer of Shawshank. Like that. So I warn you, you're about to see a frog's butt. Doesn't really look like a butt, but you're about to see it. So the researcher did, that's a frog's butt. So what the researcher did was look at this ye olde water beetle and that ye olde frog, and over the course of, you see the time value here, less than a minute, you see the frog pooping out the beetle. Sorry, not sorry. What's interesting here is that the experimental design. So the researcher found that 90% of beetles ingested like this survived, which points to an incredible evolutionary adaptation to being eaten. The bugs seem really good at escaping butts, which I don't think has ever been said before. So how would you test if that's truly an adaptation? As the study put it, an active adaptation. Well, sorry for our bug lover friends, but sometimes they perish in the name of science. So what the researcher did was test if there was some active component to this. And the researcher bound, for some of the insects in the experimental design, the researcher bound the water beetle's legs together with wax, such that the beetle could no longer use its legs. And when that happened, the beetles weren't pooped out. They were pooped out later, but they were just shells and dead. So while there was no like interior footage of the frog, and he didn't stick a camera in there or anything. Given the huge difference, either death without legs, without leg movement, or 90% survival rate and being pooped out within 6 hours on average with leg movement, that points to the beetle doing something inside of the frog. And what the researcher is speculating is that the beetle, excuse me, oh, I need some invisible coffee. What the researcher speculates the beetle is doing is literally crawling its way down the intestines of the frog, and then, how should I put this not weirdly? And then kind of like presses on the doorbell of the frog's back area. That was for any kids listening. For any adults listening, they think it scratches on his sphincter. Promoting the excretion of the bug. So, as I said before, if, there's probably other insects that do this in the world, but this is the first documented case of, more likely than not, a bug actively escaping a predator's intestines, like some kind of, like Wolverine cutting himself out of the Hulk, or Kratos surviving in Jormungandr, or Lemmiwinks. I think this is an incredible finding, in that no matter how weird we think nature is, there's always something, it seems to be, there is always something weirder that keeps us on our toes. And looking at frog butts. Let's go to the chat. The Bowtie supporter. Hey, the Bowtie. My people reached out to you recently. Let's do this thing. You'll find out about that later. Tea is better than coffee. Changed my mind. No, I'm fine. Oh, Newt Scamander says, yes, but the whole of a frog is typically called a vent in reptiles or amphibians. Yeah, I shouldn't have assumed that the researcher was just using a more PC term. It is called a vent. Okay, I thought it was like a cloaca or something. Ravdas says, geez, Kyle, I'm trying to eat. I'm sorry. So was the frog. And look what happened. We have a 10 from the Rushanik, who says, the unfortunate... Oh, yeah, the explosion in Beirut caused a seismic wave equivalent of a 3.3 earthquake. That is insane. There are multiple videos, especially on Reddit right now, there are multiple videos of the explosion, and I don't want to encourage, kind of the morbid curiosity of it. Oh, geez, Chef. The morbid curiosity of it, but if you look at the videos of the explosion, it's the most incredible blast wave footage I've ever seen. So, context, 50 people have so far died, thousands are injured. This is not fun or funny or anything like that, but I've never seen footage like this where the blast Must be in an area where the conditions are right. But the blast is so incredibly forceful and sudden that all of the air, so what happens when you see like a mushroom, this isn't a traditional mushroom cloud, but when you see like a cloud form around an explosion, what is actually happening is that there's a rapid change in pressure of the air because of material and air being pushed out of the way. And that difference in pressure changes how much water vapor some volume of air can hold. And so when you have this explosion, suddenly the change in pressure, quote unquote, releases all this water vapor, and you see this cloud like that. And it is so vivid and so huge in the Beirut footage. I've never seen anything like that. Chef Smoke, one of my first and most generous facility members with the 100. Play D&D with us sometime, please. Hashtag Hail the Almighty Basilisk. I don't know how to play D&D. That's why I don't want to. But we do have a full Magic Commander League going on in the facility on our Discord right now, and it's a lot of fun. I'm also in first place. I'll play D&D sometime, but I don't want to know any of the rules, and I want to make up my character on the fly, and I want to narrate everything myself. It's going to be tasty chaos. Hashtag tasty chaos. Shay88 with the 5. Hey, Kyle, I've heard white holes are time-reverse black holes. If they exist, would there be reverse Hawking radiation, Hawking absorption? Thanks, Shay, for the 5. I don't know. Like wormholes, white holes are mathematical predictions. And while there are a number of astronomical events that were once just theories and predictions that came true, like black holes, they were just theorized until they were discovered. We have no physical evidence of white holes. It's speculated that it would be the opposite. Like, instead of sucking everything in, it would just be spitting material out all the time. And would that involve Hawking radiation? I have no idea. That sounds like a very technical question, and I'm not sure. Master of All, frequent super, with the 5, says, hey, Kyle, how has your bouldering gone over the last few weeks? Any training you would recommend? So if you know me, you know I'm a big rock climber. I've been rock climbing for over a decade. My gyms just shut back down because they needed to. So I got about 4 sessions in. What I noticed immediately is that my forearm strength is decreased and my calluses are all but gone. So I was climbing really, really poorly, like half my ultimate strength. And if you want to get better at rock climbing, I suggest, so the thing is, rock climbing is kind of like min-maxing your character. And let's stop with the supers for just a oh geez, Chef. Let's stop with the supers for just a second so we can get on to the next topic. Chef with another 100, who says deal, let's do it. Rock climbing is kind of like min-maxing your character in that you want to really, really focus on the muscles and the movements that work the best and minimize everything else. So no rock climbers have big, thick thighs. They may have it just by coincidence, but they don't train thick thighs. It's all upper body, finger tendon strength, forearm strength, coordination. And so if you're just starting out, I would recommend, if you can't do a pull-up yet or multiple pull-ups yet, I would start there. Climbing specific pulling movement. That's what really helps. And then when you want to get more advanced, you can get something at your home. Instead of a pull-up bar, you can get what's called a hangboard, which is it's like a pull-up bar, but instead of the bar, it's just climbing specific holds of different depths and shapes. And then you can start working on contact strength, skin strength, forearm strength, and that's how you can kind of get better at it at home. And then, like I said, climbing specific exercises. So it's not really working the vanity muscles or anything like that. It's a lot of pulling, a lot of pressing, a lot of shoulder stuff. Like, I'm wide on the x-axis is the nice way to put it. Simping for science, Mud Pie with the 5. Thank you. Do you know what that reminds me of? Whatever our next segment is. Okay. I forgot about this. So that's me sitting alone at a party, as I often do. And why I bring that image up, that's me sitting alone. You can tell by the man bun that that's me. Why I bring this up is because we have more COVID-19 information. And because most of you watching are in the United States, we need to keep talking about this because we have failed in the pandemic response, and we need to turn the ship around. And I don't know if anyone saw like recent interviews with leadership about the pandemic and what they think we should do and what we should be doing, blah, blah, blah. I have very little confidence we're going to be doing the right thing very soon. So I will keep bringing it up. Sorry. I know. And if you're not from America and you're watching us right now, you must be like, what are you doing? Is that offensive? Anyway, so this is me. That was just me impersonating Super Mario. So this is me sitting alone at a party. Why? Well, I'm social distancing here. Before it was cool. And I bring up social distancing because we have a new study, new data, as science progresses, of course, showing the true effect of social distancing. All right. So I don't think people are taking the real efficacy of this to heart. It seems we have in our minds like only a vaccine will help and masks won't do anything and just standing apart from each other won't do anything. Except it totally does. Just standing a few feet apart from someone can radically decrease the number of cases and literally save lives. Case in point, new data. So in this new study, that's the name of it, enacting national social distancing policies corresponds with dramatic reduction in COVID-19 infection cases. And you can see here just a couple of graphs. So let's look at this middle one, COVID-19 cases per million. And this is days elapsed. So you'd want to look at the rate of infection over time to see if it is spreading, getting exponential. So models predict that, well, this is actual data. So in states and in countries without social distancing enacted or mandated, you can see where the trend goes, and that will get disturbingly more exponential over time. And we'll talk about exponential growth pretty soon in an episode about the end of the world. But with social distancing, you can see that that is literally flattening the curve. So it works like we went through, and you can see the same reduction in spread rate. With distancing, you have a negative spread rate, so it reduces the number of cases actively. And what this last figure says, C, is that the theoretical reduction in caseload is 65%. That is usually a good effectiveness for the flu vaccine every year, and it's never going to be 100% effective because we have to predict and guess how the flu is mutated over time. But a good immunity rate for those vaccines each year, which you should get, is around 65% or 60%. So social distancing in the reduction of cases here is getting close to like flu vaccine levels. Now, because this is more deadly and more infectious than the flu, social distancing isn't going to get it under control. Let me make that clear. But you can see that it drastically reduces the number of cases. And more specifically, you can put numbers on it. So if we look into this study, and I'll put all these studies in the pinned comment after we're live. I'm quoting now. Study says, after accounting for the number of inhabitants, this approach indicates that over a 2-week period of social distancing, it prevented an estimated 1.5 million cases in 46 nations, representing a 65% reduction in new cases. So, social distancing, 2 weeks, preventing 1.5 million cases. Now, the rates vary, but if there's a mortality rate of 1%, well, what is 1% of a million? So we're talking about thousands of lives saved over a 2-week period, and that is just from standing apart at the supermarket, Karen! Social distancing works. The longer we take, in this country at least, to get this under control, the worse this is going to be. The worse it's going to get. Google is having its employees work from home until next summer. And they probably know information. I don't know. Who am I? Oh, I don't know the... Tom Google? Let's go to the chat. American Time Lord says, whoa, we're live. Wow. You had your chance. You missed it. Rodrigo Vargas says, there's a breathing sound resonating through your mic. Nothing really bad, just creepy, because it sounds like, well, I have a facility fan blowing on me, so now that should help. But now I'm hot. Mike says, does light and different wavelengths make sound? I don't know. Light can exert some kind of pressure, but it doesn't exert the kind of pressure that creates a pressure wave in air. So light can have like a radiative pressure, and that's literally momentum transfer from photons bouncing off stuff. And that's how solar sails work, for example. You're in the middle of space, you have a big mylar sheet, and photons hitting that mylar sheet over time will transfer minuscule amounts of momentum, but over time it will accelerate to a point where you're actually traveling through space, as Carl Sagan envisioned. But that's not the same kind of pressure that will immediately create a pressure wave, like an explosion, unfortunately, would. The sun, as another example, presses on the Earth with quite a bit of radiative pressure just from the light. But it's not a sound wave. Caden says, I'm just casually blowing up a giant inflatable Oscar Mayer hot dog while watching this. Ulmarulu says, hey Kyle, are you aware that one of your ceiling lights is flickering? What? Back there? Oh, that one always does that. It's actually flickering at such a interesting frame rate that human eyes can't perceive it. This is for a different kind of... It's lighting for a different... I've said too much. Wait, I don't know how much COP is. I don't know how much to freak out. Santiago Ardia with 20,000, whatever that is, was gonna simp for a girl, but I'd rather hashtag simp for science. That's right. Instead of spending your money on bells in Animal Crossing or on Belle Delphine for her bathwater and spit, simp for science. It's for a good cause. Eventually. David Jones with the 10 says, please speak on the Zodiac dust cloud just to wedge in a Dr. Brian May Queen reference. Hashtag simp for science. You know, the issue here is that I mention, if I even hum a Queen song, I will be demonetized. They're everywhere. I don't actually know about the zodiacal dust cloud, but I do know that Brian May is a secret nerd. If many of you don't know, he's a PhD astronomer, astrophysicist? I forget which. And he's had like comets named after him, and he's written scientific papers. So in addition to being one of the best rock guitarists in the history of the universe, he's also a big old nerd, which you can kind of tell by his haircut. Okay, 20,000 COP is $5. I'll take it. It's all going. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. Prisoner says, what does simp mean? Well, a simp is short for simpleton, maybe. It denotes a young man who gives money to streamers, usually girls, looking to win some kind of ephemeral affection or attention from them when they have no real interest in them ever at all. Colombian peso, COT. Oh, maybe I did. Just one sec. Yep, don't want to miss Jay Howard. One of one of my original and most generous and intelligent facility members on the staff for a long time, Jay Howard with the 99. You guys don't have to do that. You're already in the building. Don't I pay you enough? I mean, Jay says, Kyle, why is it that Ghost of Tsushima is the best game? Hashtag chef started it. Ghost of Tsushima, let's pause the chats for a second so we can go on to our next topic. But Ghost of Tsushima, if you haven't played it and you like open world narrative games, Ghost is fantastic. It is beautiful. It really scratches that open world itch where I love bouncing around from main story missions to just collectibles to just looking at the gorgeously rendered island in Japan, where just, I guess, everything is a beautiful cherry blossom everywhere. And beyond that, playing the entire game in a wonderful Japanese voiceover, and being a samurai, it's very fulfilling. It makes you, in the same way, well, Sucker Punch is good at this, in the same way that they made you feel like a superhero with Infamous, in the same way that Rocksteady makes you feel like Batman, this does make you feel like a samurai, and it feels good. Let's go on. You can quote me on that. Let's go on to our third topic, Kansas. They're everywhere. They came from outer space. That's not true. They're everywhere. Tens of millions, perhaps 100 million year old creatures revived from the deep here to steal our sucrose? Anyway, many of you have heard about this next topic, I'm sure, which is, it's live. I'm thinking about it because it's a new way to frame how we think about life. So, many of you have probably heard of organisms that can be, in some kind of resting state or like stasis state for a long time. But this is the craziest example I think we've ever seen of this, where these are aerobic microorganisms. So aerobic meaning that they're using oxygen. And these that you're seeing around me were microorganisms that were found in sediment at the very bottom of the ocean. And they took seafloor sediment from the bottom of the ocean. They found microorganisms in them, and they dated them to between 13 million and 100 million years old. And then they gave them food because they wanted to start a John Carpenter's The Thing like situation. And when they gave these microorganisms food, what they found was that they started growing again. After 100 million years, they started growing again. The study says, nearly all the microbes responded quickly to the food, like they were just laying there and wait, Pacific Rim style. 68 days, that was almost close. 68 days after the experiments start, the total number of microbial cells had increased by 10,000 times, from about 100 cells per cubic centimeter to 1 million. Up to 99.1% of the microorganisms were revived. So I said this kind of changes how we think about life, because we think of life on very short timescales, how long you could possibly be alive or exist. And what these organisms point out is that in different conditions with different biology, your scale of time could be very, very different. Imagine if you could be dormant for 100 million years just waiting on some hairless ape to give you food. What a weird existence that would be. And it makes me think of, ideas like panspermia or seeding of other planets. You could imagine some situation where microorganisms like this were sheltered inside some ejecta of a planet. And by that I mean, say a Mars-sized object hit the Earth again. And, ocean sediment and rock and all this stuff, was thrown out into space. And by whatever luck, that rock and that sediment stayed together and inside of it, it was protected enough that 100 million years later or whatever, it lands on another planet and it just happens to have sucrose or whatever in it, and it's primordial soup, and then you have life on another planet. That's an idea of panspermia, but I think this starts pointing in in that kind of direction, where we need to think of life as not such a finite time in the sun. You know, life includes not just us, but all organisms. And while our time as a biofilm on this rock is fleeting, if you're a microorganism, you could be partying for 100 million years, baby! Almost lost my mind a little bit. Barry from ASDA with the 5, he says, I don't see how face mask has become political and not just a health issue. What is going on with people's mindset? I've said this before, but in America specifically, there seems to be a confluence of factors where, you know, we as a culture, as opposed to a culture like Italy or a culture like Japan or whatever, Americans are distrustful of experts, distrustful of government, especially big government or large institutions telling them what to do, highly prize individual freedom and their rights. And so that once a mask wearing thing, the man telling you to do something, once that became politicized, I think it started to glom on to these other American traits. And now, like climate change, like vaccination, it's become a political issue where you can divide pretty, the variable of if you're on the left or the right of the political spectrum explains a lot of variance in what you choose to do with your body and your life. And it shouldn't be that way. We should, of course, we should rely, especially for something like a disease, we should rely on epidemiology and science and stuff like that. But we're not. That's why I'm out here, simping for science, baby. Woogie Maniac 87 with the 5. Hey Kyle, love your show. How much do unscientific videos on the media and the internet about flat Earth and fake space annoy you? Well, I don't get as annoyed as you may think I get. So, I think social media was a mistake. So you can have highly vocal minority views get an outstretched or an unrepresentative appeal, an unrepresentative showing to people. Jeez. And so you can have like 10 people reaching like 10 million people because of Twitter. So I think that's a mistake. But I think we do have to always remember that things like Flat Earth Society and fake space, you know, fake moon landing, this is a highly vocal minority. Most people don't think that. And, you know, the Flat Earth Society is like 20,000 people. Yes, that's a lot of people who think the Earth is flat. And yes, they can reach a lot of people because social media was a mistake. But there's very few of them, and there's very few people who take them seriously. And I think we need, in the age of social media, we need to retain context where, you know, the media cycle right now is if a celebrity tweets a sentence, or if some loser just tweets something, you know, shitty about the new Last of Us game or whatever, suddenly, you know, an article's written up, most gamers are disappointed. It's like, no. It doesn't represent the whole. In the same way as, like, you won't believe how many people think the Earth is flat. No, I would. It's not that many. And so we have this system in place that rewards shock value and rage and disbelief, and because of that, we give outsized attention to things that don't really get that much attention. And of course, some things, you know, are minority views that do need attention, things that, you know, blind spots in our morality and, you know, our political justice system and all that, of course. But for very fringe sciencey things specifically, we do need to keep in mind that that it is fringe for a reason. No one takes it seriously. academically or, anything like that. So context matters, and we should remember the context. Master of All, again with the 5. You got a lot of $5 on your hand. Have you seen the new study on black holes potentially solving the loss of information paradox? No, but if someone could put it in the chat, I will check it out, but not live. Let's pause the supers for a second so we can get to the next topic. But Stephen Witham with the 10, who says, the scientists who revived the microorganisms were so preoccupied with whether or not they could do it, they didn't think if they should do it. And now we're doomed. That's my Jeff Goldblum impression. Let's go on to our next topic, which is peer review. So, as we always do on office hours, during peer review, we take one of your comments from the last episode of the facility and we highlight it, and then we give you a plaque, which Kevin has definitely made. The last episode, which is now going mini viral for me, was about the drowning machine, which is an actual engineering happenstance where you have a low head dam. Low head meaning it's not very high off the ground. You don't have a lot of water behind it, but a low head dam that creates a submerged or drowned hydraulic jump. And because of this, and you can watch the video, right over the edge of a low head dam, and it doesn't look like it, there's actually a swirling vortex underwater that can hold objects indefinitely. And it's so dangerous and so difficult to escape that warning signs actually do call it, and pamphlets from the USGS, this is an official term. They call it the drowning machine. It's intense. And I hope that my episode served as some kind of PSA about it, because if you like to go kayaking because you wear Birkenstocks all the time, you should be very aware of this kind of danger, because you cannot see them, really. So, to that end, sit down. To that end, we have a comment from Robert Lockhart, who says, who has some advice for people encountering a low head dam, which I think we should also share in the spirit of a PSA, because he seems knowledgeable. Probably. Robert says, victims, do this in order of priority. 1, try to stroke perpendicular to the current, away from, at a 90-degree angle from. So you don't want to try to swim back up the dam or downstream from the dam. You want to try to reach the shores. Then pray that the sides aren't vertical, because you're not going to have much energy other than to roll onto a gentle beach after you try to escape. 3, don't give up. Every second trying to successfully fight means an additional second for rescuers to attempt to help. And if you're a rescuer, turn off the water flow, which may or may not be possible if you can do it. Get in a boat, get to the victim, and pull the victim to shore with a rope. Do not get in yourself. If, and only if, you're an experienced diver with a support team, tie a rope around your shoulders, swim out, grab the person, and have your support team pull you back in before you're as screwed as the original victim. Good luck. It's been an honor, sir. Well, like when the Mythbusters did that episode about how to escape a car that's fallen into water. Maybe, just maybe, someone will see this and remember it when they're out there kayaking, whitewater rafting, or they're on a river with a low head dam, which there are thousands across the United States. Many, as I said, in disrepair or unmaintained, and there's not signs. Maybe, just maybe, getting that information out there could help somebody someday. And for helping me do that, Robert, you are now an honorary professor at the facility. Fantastic. Just fantastic. Yeah. Wait, what? Who's here? Oh, are they taking autographs? Oh, they are? Okay. I'll be right back after this commercial break. Oh, I love you guys. Yeah. I don't know. Probably your second album. Oh, I love that. It was. Oh, yeah. The Drowning Pool? Yeah, I thought that was a funny reference to that song that people used to sing when that kind of music was cool, but it's not anymore. Yeah. If you could just sign, right here, this plaque. No, I'm not using it for anything. I know it says someone's name on it, but I would rather have your name on it, because you're. Oh, just. Yeah, no, the name of the tour is fantastic. Very science. I love it. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, I'll see your set later tonight. Okay. What? Oh, his name's Kevin. No, he doesn't want an autograph. It's fine. Oh, the drowning machine was here. They were cool. Oh, Robert, I'm gonna have to send you a different plaque because yours got damaged. What does the chat have to say? Master of All with another 5. Oh, nope, read that one. Dark Dragon, slow claps for me. Hey, thank you. Ward Van Wallenham says, hello, Kyle, love the show. Hey. Could you use drowning machines as effective electricity generators? There is a way to do that. It's called a turbine. But, I mean, you're just describing hydroelectricity. Hydroelectricity, where you're not using the vortex itself because that's not very efficient. What you do is inside of a dam, like the Hoover Dam or whatever, at the bottom you have turbines that can be spun, and that spinning can generate electricity. So what you're doing from a physics perspective is taking potential energy and turning that into kinetic energy of falling water, and then having that be turned into kinetic energy of the spinning turbines. And there's loss of energy at each step, but really efficient hydroelectricity comes from water, which is very heavy, going from a high place, high head, to a low place, meaning that there's a lot of energy, potential energy, gravitationally there. And once it gets to the bottom, it's moving really fast, and use that to spin some turbines. Both pronunciations are correct. Because whenever my engineering professor said turbine, I got confused. But both are correct. Well, what do you know about that? We have Adam Frost with $9 from New Zealand. Eh? Not so bad. That's Australian. Hey, Kyle, you're awesome. My question. In the future, could we wire infrared directly into our brains? Do you think we could experience new colors? Well, so you're asking, can we Geordie LaForge it? And I don't know. I think something that'd be more realistic would be having some kind of sense that maps onto what our vision is already doing. So poking around the brain is going to be difficult and dangerous. So I would suggest basically Geordie LaForging it, where you have one information translated into another form of information. So you have something like, that's what an infrared camera is. That's what you're describing, right? But instead of it being in your brain, it's in your hand, right? So I could see you wearing some kind of goggles or glasses that is effectively what you're describing, where it takes IR information and puts that into a visible light medium, and then you can effectively see it. There is, however, and I'm not saying this is impossible. I'm just saying that messing around with the brain is going to be dangerous and complicated, and we probably won't do it ethically. But pit vipers, which have pits on their faces that detects infrared, we think that information, that heat information, is mapped onto the visual parts of the snake's brain. Don't get that. And so in some animals, like pit vipers, we think they do, in fact, see infrared. But again, it's a translation of information. They're not actually seeing it. They're sensing it and then mapping it onto the brain in the way that it's already been, evolved to. So I think it's theoretically possible, but I think there's other ways, easier ways to do it. I would like to see microwaves in that kind of way. So you could just see how much like Wi-Fi and everything else is around you. I bet you'd freak out and stop using social media. Joseph Lero with the 5, he says, hey, Mr. Hill, I love what you do. Hey, well, I love you simping for science, baby. I'm not bad at winking. I think it's funny. Real Goose says, Kyle, what are your favorite cut of beeves? How do you like them cooked? I'm a big ground beef quesadilla kind of guy. Newt Scamander says most pythons also have pit organs. Oh, we're getting to the end of the show. Let's pause on the supers for just a second. We have our last topic. Pugs, or bulldog. I don't care. Whatever one this is. Now, I am going to be possibly controversial here. And I'm going to probably ruffle some feathers about dogs like this specifically. But I'm choosing to do it because I believe it's important. And I think we have ethical blind spots. And I think that most people have a misconception about this situation. So, dogs are the result of artificial selection. So if you follow me, if you're a student of biology, you know natural selection, evolution through the process of natural selection, is starts off random and then gets directed. And the environment is what directs it. So when something is replicating, there are chance mutations in the DNA, in the genetic code, and those chance mutations lead to different morphological, physiological, whatever, changes. And those changes are then selected for by the environment based on how well they help the organism pass on those genes that were mutated. So the classic example, of course, being tiny horses randomly getting longer necks, and that just so happened to get them more resources in an area with very tall trees, and over time that mutation spread throughout the population and was selected again and again and again. Then you get giraffes. Artificial selection, on the other hand, is where something, namely humans, sees a trait that they want to occur, and then they artificially select for that trait. So you start from a proto-dog, which is more or less a wolf, and you say, well, I want it to be friendlier, and I want it to have spots. So what you would do is start identifying the progenitors. Excuse me. You start identifying the progenitors of those traits, and you start artificially selecting for them. So you see a wolf that kind of has spot-like kind of something, and then you find another wolf that kind of has spot-like something. Then you make them kith. Then over time, over many, many generations, you might start getting dogs with spots. Or you refuse to breed any very aggressive wolves. And so over time, the only wolves passing on their genes tend to be friendlier. And then over time, over many generations, you make them kith, and you get man's best friend. That's an artificial selection. That is us identifying traits and directing the evolution of now we have dogs. And that's why we have so many different quote-unquote breeds of dogs. We want a dog to have a certain kind of face, certain kind of fur, be a certain size, have a certain disposition, friendlier or more aggressive or more loyal or what have you. And because evolution is so powerful, especially when directed artificially, you can get many different kinds, a plethora, a wide, an array of different morphological traits, from tiny little dogs with smooshed faces to dogs that weigh more than me and can run, 45 miles an hour. Can these even run? Now, that was all preface to what I think is going to be the bit of controversy here. I believe that these kind of dogs, French bulldogs, pugs, these kind of dogs that have these traits here specifically, small, short cranium, scrunched nose and face, I believe these dogs are artificial selection gone awry. I believe that these dogs represent an ethical blind spot, and if you attribute any kind of consciousness to man's best friend, I don't think you can morally rationalize away continuing to breed dogs like this. Why? Well, I wouldn't be making this moralizing point on opinion. I don't happen to like these kinds of dogs. That's true. So I'm biased. But when I say a moral point and ascribing consciousness to a dog, I'm saying because these dogs really do suffer more than other dogs. If you start at the beginning, 80 to 90% of this breed of dog have to be born by cesarean section. We've selected their heads to be so large in relation to their bodies that their mothers cannot naturally birth the majority of them anymore, which is to say that if humans evaporated, all of these dogs would die out. And that starts to get at something like, okay, I didn't know that statistic. That's not good. Well, it gets a little bit worse. So these dogs, when you measure their traits and you try to figure out why they behave and why they act and why they have the healthiness that they do or not, you find what you'd expect, that these dogs specifically, in their cranial length, have a very shortened area up by the nose. Now, I don't know if you know about noses, but you need them to breathe, and it helps you breathe. And in bulldogs, French bulldogs, pugs, this squishing of the nose and the breathing tract does actually lead to the closing of nostrils. And I'm just getting started here. So many of these dogs just have more closed airways than others. And if you've ever wondered why pugs and bulldogs always seem like they're... it's because they're trying to overcome this. And they're literally, if you see them a lot, flaring their nostrils. It's the same as when you have trouble breathing at night and you wear those breathe right strips that flare your nostrils so you don't have to do it. You're trying to increase the size of your airway to get more oxygen. These dogs do that on reflex because their noses aren't the right shape anymore. And I say right as a judgment point to, I think they should probably get more oxygen than they get. Not that it's not cute. When you put this artificial selection picture together, might be obvious then that pugs, French bulldogs, bulldogs all suffer greatly from a very common ailment among them, which is BOAS, which is brachycephalic obstructive airway syndrome. Almost all of them suffer from this and live a very stressful life and have a lot of other associated disabilities. It's hard for them to get air during exercise because of the way the nose is squished like this. It leads to exhaustion, which makes them work harder and overheat. Again, if you ever wondered why small dogs like this all of a sudden just like start breathing like their life depended on it, if they're just moving around a little bit, it's because their life does depend on it. This syndrome frequently results in insufficient blood oxygen, limiting their cardiovascular function, and it leads to a shorter lifespan because of frequent heart failure and brain-related issues such as seizing. They have acid reflux from the syndrome because they're constantly breathing excessively and very heavily, and they snore a lot through no fault of their own, and that leads to trouble sleeping. And so my point here is that it's inarguable that is a pretty cute dog. And I'm sure there are many of these breeds of dogs that are very happy and they live long lives and their owners are fantastic. But what I'm saying is when we look more closely at what we have done artificially to some of these animals, I think society as a whole has turned a blind eye, more or less, I never hear about it, to the actual well-being of some of these creatures that we have shaped their very existence. Ask yourself, have we shaped the existence of a pug or a bulldog into something that takes into account the health and well-being of the dog? And in this case, I believe it does not. And I would make a moral argument. And again, I know this is going to sound pretty heavy, but I would say that the moral imperative here is to probably stop breeding these dogs. Again, I'm sure there's many happy pugs and dogs and bulldogs and owners of them, but on the whole, these dogs have very rough lives in comparison to other dogs. And when you know that, and when you can demonstrate it scientifically, physiologically, from a health standpoint, I think it becomes very hard to make the argument to keep selecting them to be in a state of suffering. Sure, it's cute. But if you're an American and you thought wearing a mask for 10 minutes was bad, try having trouble breathing for your entire life, which is shorter now. Okay, so that probably brought down the mood for a lot of you there, but sometimes you got to take a stand against things that you think are deserve more attention. And so I said my piece, and I know it was a little dramatic, but I like dogs, and I've never met a pug who didn't sound or look like it was just constantly in pain, just like on the verge of passing out. And what do you know? They usually are. Before we end the show, we have 50 from Kenton Compton. Oh, yeah, that's a cool name. Just putting a thing to let you know, you are my #1 YouTuber. And I always get excited when I see your videos. It's because of you that I got addicted to science and math. Here is my thank you, and here's to the next subscriber milestone. Kenton! Thank you. Like I always say, I was very lucky to have fantastic teachers at every level. And if I'm good at this kind of sciencey thing at all, I feel morally obligated to be a great teacher for people who didn't get a great teacher. So Kenton, I appreciate every single cent. Not pennies, though. I wouldn't pick up a penny off the street, as we discussed. But thank you. And I hope your studies go well. And I love that you love STEM now. That's what I do when I don't know how to end something. We have 5115 from Music Central Piano, frequent commenter and donator. Keep it up, Kyle. Completely agree on the social distancing take. Gotta say, 20,000 people believing something that is clearly and evidently false is 20,000 too many. My issue is more so the lack of critical thinking. Sure, 20,000 people believing in the flat earth enough to go to conferences and stuff is a lot. But again, in the scheme of, 7 billion people, some percentage of people will believe anything. Probably. We have Master of All's last $5 donation. Do you have a specific brand of argan oil you'd recommend? I use one and only argan oil, not a sponsor. But they could be, if you start talking about them. We have a 10 from Sorcha. Just want to say thank you for talking about these dog breeds. I have friends that are veterinarians who spend more time than they should having to cut pups out of them or trying to fix their issues. I think it's something we should talk about. If you're a dog lover, these kind of things should be brought to your attention if they're valid. Chad Freeman with the 10. Hey, Kyle, beard is epic as always. Oh, it's an experiment. I'm trying to Jason Momoa it. ARIA is half and half on it. Any studies that show that biurnal beats work? I don't know. I'd have to read up on it. I don't think there's a whole lot of research and or good evidence on a lot of those. You don't really have to do anything and your brain gets better kinds of things, but specifically I'd have to look into it. For things like meditation, if it's a very meditative kind of thing, there are studies on meditation that, reduce stress, increase mindfulness, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I'd have to look into it specifically before giving my opinion. Let's make this our last super chat. Nelson Torre. Hey, Kyle. Love the Kyle. If Andromeda and the Milky Way become Milkdromeda, does that mean space is expanding at different rates at different locations? No. So the universe is expanding as a whole. But locally, that won't be very apparent until the heat death of the universe, until the stretching of the universe gets so advanced that even, atoms are being pulled apart. But right now, and for the foreseeable for the foreseeable forever from now, stretching is going to be on the grandest of scales, the scale of the entire universe, and you're not going to notice locally, really. It's like being on the outside of a balloon and blowing up the balloon. The balloon itself might get quite large, but the difference between the 2 points locally will hardly change. And so when we become Milkdromata in a couple billion years, and we won't even notice, well, they will merge together, but there's so much space in between stars, the galaxies will literally pass through each other and then come together. But when we become Milkdromata, we're not, it's going to happen. The expansion rate of the universe is not going to prevent the local clustering of clusters and stuff for the foreseeable future. And with that, we're at the end of office hours. Whew! It was a hot one today because you told me that my patented facility fan was blowing into the microphone. I get it, but I run hot. I run like an RTG in a spacecraft. You can look it up. What did we talk about today? We talked about the greatest escape perhaps of all time. The beetle literally crawling out of the intestines of a frog, like Shawshank Redemption. We also talked about me social distancing because social distancing, according to latest studies and new data, really does work and saves thousands and thousands of lives every single week. Put on a mask. Stay away from me. Don't touch me. We also talked about microorganisms revived after 100 million years in stasis. It's 2020. Nothing could go wrong with that. We also talked about Robert's advice for escaping a drowning machine if you're unlucky enough to ever meet a drowning machine, and we didn't give him a plaque, but I did get something signed by the Drowning Machine Band, and that was pretty fun. And finally, we talked about the ethical conundrum that is pugs, bulldogs, French bulldogs. My opinion, I think we should really take a hard look at whether or not we should breed these animals anymore because they suffer. And if you love dogs, you don't want them to suffer. You just want them all to be good boys. And as always, that's a bug. That's a butt bug. And as always, if you want to join the facility, if you want to talk with me in Discord almost every single day, if you want to get episodes a day early, if you want to be in our Discord, we have a Magic League in there, we have D&D games, we have trivia nights and movie nights. If you want to see behind-the-scenes photos of all the episodes I'm working on, you can go to patreon.com/Kyle Hill, where we also have merchandise now, which you can click in the top right-hand corner of my channel page. It's a Redbubble website, but my security team will be putting that in the chat. I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of their week. Stay safe out there. Listen to medical experts. Give some aid to Beirut if you can. Pet a dog. And be nice to each other. Because at the end of the day, this is all we got.